So with that, we would be glad to hear your thoughts tonight, and if you want to take the time and look at the materials, they'll be online this week. You can download the report, it'll be in the PDF format, and then please, I guess, we didn't specify this exactly, but maybe send comments to Alan.
Would be good, yes.
Send comments to Alan, and then we'll get them, and we'll make sure that we are collecting and cataloging comments, and then we'll be refining and integrating things into a final report. This is the draft. So thank you.
It seems inevitable to me that the way Clinton's developing, something's going to happen to this property probably sooner rather than later. What you said about having one large industry come in, it really does create a big traffic jam in the morning and a big traffic jam in the afternoon. Your idea of the multi-use would maybe spread that out over a 24-hour period and maybe be less impact than we had before. I think this is, of the ideas I've seen, I think this is very good.
Just a clarification question. Where will this be online?
It's on the Town of Clinton homepage.
Well, I think it'll be on ClintonRSVP.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Certainly first.
Okay, all right, yes. And when you talk about development entities, are you talking about developers?
Yes.
Okay.
Or users, or because people, both kinds of people would actually have some uses for the industrial space. They're interested also.
Okay.
As tenants, you mean?
Yeah,
And
and
then
they're generally more like, I guess, investors that are looking at properties that have development teams associated with them.
You spoke of the houses as the rent that they would support. Do you actually envision these as being necessarily rental housing or perhaps owners?
No, it would be entirely dependent on the developer. And certain developers have certain products that they're comfortable with and that they do the numbers on, and even the way that they build things. So that would be entirely dependent on them. The types of units that we've depicted we think would be appropriate. We've shown some more multifamily type buildings, which could be rental or condos. And then we've shown some townhouse types,
Which could be
either as well. So it's up in there.
Yeah, of course. And then, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One more
No,
question,
go ahead.
I'm done. You had talked about the affordable housing zone overlay. Can you give us a ballpark estimate of what's considered affordable housing instead of that, either in terms of purchase price or
It's-
rental?
The exact figure is 80% of the adjusted median income. And you can test my memory. We did have,
It's about $57,000.
okay, 57 is the median income in,
That's
Oh, that's
80%.
oh, that's
That's
80.
80% of
Okay,
it,
sorry.
yes.
And then just the gross?
Yep. That's
So what is that?
Household income.
Household
Yeah,
income.
Household income. So places that sell for $57,000?
No.
No, that's, to be a resident in one of those units, that would have to be your income. It could be no higher.
Oh, I see.
And only a percentage of that would be dedicated to paying for housing. What, 30%? Or is there a...
It's 30, well, I think that's another metric that they use as well, that no more than, I think it is 30% of your overall income can be devoted to rent or housing costs.
But only under state law, only 20% of the units in an affordable development have to be affordable housing.
But that would be, is the grant money?
80% of market rate housing and 20% are so-called affordable units.
But that would be the grant money from the state to be,
There's all kinds of different programs.
for affordable houses.
That's a whole.
To be qualified as an IHZ incentive housing zone, it would have to be that mix of affordability, a minimum of 20% at 80% adjusted median income.
And that changes, I mean, at 55,000 or 57,000, whatever that was, it's a single individual. Then if it's two people, it goes up, and then it goes up.
historic district.
Yes.
We talk about Clinton coming in and under the bridge and everything. And what you see when you come down and what you go up. What is being done on the house in the corner with the white fence? I've been told from the town it was being ripped down.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
historic
an
district, we have
eyesore.
to get these people to.
The windows are
Trust me,
coming out. You
well,
don't
I've
know.
heard lots of things about that, and the one thing that I know is that I don't want to get involved.
Yeah, I heard that the town put up the fence for them
Well, the
because,
Middletown court actually issued demolition order on the house.
yeah, they were,
It's about a
they
year
were
ago.
there today taking the out
Oh.
windows and putting them in other
I mean-
locations.
I mean, just absolutely,
I know,
Yeah.
I
Are
know.
they
And the
gonna
house
demo that
next
house?
door went up for foreclosure and she pulled it out. And that's going-
Yeah, she filed for bankruptcy,
Okay.
and that stops the foreclosure
But that is
process.
an eyesore,
oh, you bet.
okay? I
But it's the
mean,
most
show all these
significant
lovely
house on-
homes.
you know, you're gonna
Yeah.
do historic, and you're gonna do this, and here's this.
Here are these houses that,
I think one of the
Are falling
problems
apart.
is that it's not a historic district yet.
Yeah,
And
But what
I sit
would
on the
make-
HDC with
Even
another
if it
fellow
were.
here.
yeah, I know.
But the problem is, the things we want to do, but we don't have any legal authority. We call it teeth. We don't have
Yeah.
any teeth.
Yeah.
We have to
Say
send,
things to
could the
people.
town take it by eminent
But,
domain?
yeah. So
I
we don't
had
have that
heard
power.
that, but then somebody told me that her family got involved and pulled her out, so.
We
I
did
mean,
it every-
Her family got
Yeah.
involved and they basically put her in bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy process stops both the auctioning of the second house
Oh,
and
okay.
the completion of the sale of the first house.
But
I was gonna say there's three
I
houses.
don't know, when,
Yeah.
oh, my mom,
It'd be a
Let's see if he's
historical
done it.
tragedy.
I'm just talking. All right, because our houses are a reflection. Our houses are nice, and they're gonna put that in an historic district, okay?
Your houses, you take
But
a lot
it's
of,
historic district.
when you can get funds to restore, as you put it out.
I wanna go home.
It does not impose restrictions on someone. In other words, if you owned a 1750 house on this street, and you decided that you wanted to tear it down and build a contemporary house instead, so long as it was affordable zoning, you
Unfortunately,
could
there's
still go
nothing,
back.
unfortunately, there's nothing to stop it.
Oh, stop anyway.
To stop it.
The National Historic District has no restrictions or standards. What we would try to do through the village zone is introduce a standard of preservation, which is part of the town's zone. But nonetheless, someone could still go through a process. I think we could probably, in that, through the village zone, introduce a review where they'd have to have a review for the work of tearing down the house. But I think in the end, there was nothing that could stop it.
Not much. I mean, Connecticut, there are
You can
places
slow
where
it,
you
you can
can.
slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
You can have a whole demolition for a certain amount of time, but you have to find somebody who's willing to restore it.
Right, and at the end of 20,
And
at
if
the
you
end,
can't, they can do whatever
yeah,
they
the
want.
equipment can be in the street on 120th day, and it can be a hole in the ground in seconds.
One thing, just on that topic though, generally, about these dynamics of preservation and upkeep of homes and things of that nature. Improvements in a district such as the kind that we're describing would generally trend a district towards being renovated and improved and having the historic resources preserved in a very high-quality manner. Having that type of investment at the center of the district would have a spillover effect to the historic district.
Absolutely.
And particularly if the historic district itself is in place and supported by the community, then I think you might actually see, and for some people this is a negative, but you might actually see some turnover of properties that are problem properties today.
And, I mean, there's been quite a few studies that show that, historic districts, most of them are on local historic districts because it's easier to do the study. But there has been some work on just National Register of Historic Districts, and for the most part, buildings in houses in those districts hold their value better, they increase in value better, they're more stable, and the neighborhoods themselves are more stable. And for the most part, also from my observation, and I'm sure there's studies out there somewhere, I just haven't read them, most areas that are National Register Historic Districts are in generally better condition because of the fact that the homeowner understands that, I mean, it really is a historic house. This is not something, it's not just I make it up and somebody puts a rubber stamp on it. You know, I do the research, I have to back it up. It goes to a state review board, goes through the state staff, it goes through the state review board full of a room full of PhDs that can torture you if they want to. They've only done it to me once or twice. And then it goes to the Park Service, who reviews it again. So after it goes through all that, you are pretty sure that where you're living is a special place. And that has a lot of benefits. It has a lot of benefits in neighborhood pride, it has a lot of benefits in spirit, and it has a lot of physical benefits that I've seen.
Yeah, I used to live in a district that went through this process in another state. And from my experience, the pushback is for people who bought into the district years ago when maybe it was, you know, on the way down, older buildings that were deteriorating, places with windows boarded up in the back. People whose time frame is a lot shorter and who look at strictly, what's this going to cost me in the next year or so? I have very little money. Maybe it's retirees, maybe it's people who've lost their job or whatever. And if there are restrictions upon what you can do to the exterior,
but there aren't. It would be with a...
you will get pushback from those residents if they are there. Anybody who says this is going to cost me another $100 a month. Possibly these, you know, if the value of these houses increases, they may be looking at tax, you know, local assessments that increase and therefore taxes.
Well, it is a double-edged sword in that respect, but you know, that's no reason not.
There's no reason not to try, but that's the pushback.
Brad?
No, I don't have
Oh, I
anything.
got you.
No, I'm sorry.
One thing that's nice about the approach that we've discussed here is that the historic district is ready to go.
Yeah,
And that has no restrictions to it, and it opens up some opportunities.
Right.
So that could be a first step. Let the neighborhood get comfortable with it, and then the village zone could be a second step, which includes some preservation standards.
Right, exactly. And as soon as people who, you know, really either don't understand it or don't believe that there's no restrictions, and they realize that lightning has not struck, it's usually easier to do.
Josh? Go ahead.
Question, in the event that, you know, industrial preservation, if you will, for using the Unilever facility for industry doesn't pan out, there's really not much interest in that. Did you look at the idea of just abandoning the mixed use and going retail and residential, like kind of like Lubeck Square, how they've got, you know, some retail on the first floor and they've got, you know, it's a mix of residential living. It's pretty nice as long as it's not overdone.
Yeah,
But it just abandoned the industry if it doesn't work.
well, that's a development program that would work in this sort of case very well. That in taking the existing manufacturing floor, basically the single-story box out the back, out of this equation, you're left with a pretty nice historic structure which can be reused as a layer with active ground floors, retail, restaurants, whatever, what have you, then residential or commercial space on the upper floors. And that same process can be repeated around. And I think Lubeck Square is a great example because that's a very traditional sort of city building approach where everything is right at the street edge. There's zero lot lines, the sidewalk is right there. It's a very active and vibrant district. It doesn't need to be that urban in this setting. I think it can have a little bit more village character to it. And the scale is, I think, a little bit lower here than in West
I've seen that
Hartford.
down in the Charlotte area where they built new here to more spread out, but there's still a mix of
But the idea that this is
retail and residential.
that this is a shared green with some sidewalk cafes that have seating on and not that spill out at night or that sort of idea, I think is great.
Yeah, I think we could have carryover into.
But that's going to need a revitalization of Clinton. To put it over there, when what's happening is that the main street of Clinton is not being developed. The main street of Clinton, which is where the post office, where the buildings, where the downtown should be, is dead.
And the idea of this was to bring people proximate to the downtown. so that they could walk there and they could support those.
There's nothing to support at this
Well,
moment.
we're working on that too.
Yeah,
That's-
well, then work
they're
on
all
that
different.
before you put a
No, you
whole
work on all
area.
these things simultaneously. We have a committee that's been working on that, and if you walk down there, you'll see that somebody recently painted the facades of a rather ugly building, largely because they got involved in this. 2 galleries have opened up. We're talking with the state about they're going to rent a 3rd space so that we might put something else, an arts-related facility into that. So there are a lot of things taking place to try to bring activity to downtown. And this is just one dimension of it. The sidewalk improvements, the eventual improvements to Route 1, all of those things are aimed at. The whole vision of planning and zoning is to revitalize the downtown. And this is just one segment of the activity.
I think that's a very good set of points. And directly to that point as well, we've worked with a number of real estate economists, FXM and others in our planning work. And what all of them tell us over and over again is that retail shops, restaurants and such follow, they don't lead. So you need to actually create a base that will support those uses. So what this does directly is adds residents to the center of Clinton. And those residents will be better supporting of the type of local businesses and shops that you're talking about to fill in Main Street. And I think that this gives some of those shops more of a fighting chance than they would have today with the existing residence base.
Josh, is sanitation within the scope of this?
Sanitation?
Yes.
Yeah, it is in I guess maybe even a lighter-handed fashion than the environmental investigation of the site was. We've looked at it to know enough that it's possible to resolve. We don't have a specific design for it. The idea of sewage, Clinton, as you know, does not have public sewage. Development of this type of density can be supported by package treatment sewage plants. Connecticut has some special circumstances in that regard, but we think that overall that it's a resolvable issue that development entities, developers would know about as they come into the process and would work into their numbers and figures, and that they can work that out with the site plan. We have enough room on the site to have package treatment integrated.
Also in the publication I was looking at that you sent ahead, it looked like there was a $25 million financing gap in the plan. And I'm just wondering, I mean, we just looked at something from New Britain the other evening, how they'd gotten way down the road and they realized they had a financing gap, which meant they're suggesting bonding. I'm just wondering how you see that financing gap being filled.
Yeah, I think that was a few things to qualify that, is that those numbers are very preliminary and rough. And I think that was sort of the raw gap in a bit of a worst case. I think a lot of the resources for pre-development that we've identified, I see as one of the potentials. Brownfield initiatives is another potential. Each of those eat away at that gap. And then the historic credits are a major contributor.
So this is before the historic credits?
I think the 25 million was before the historic credits.
How much is, how much the total project was?
Well, it was the dynamic that we see.
I'd have to look at it again. It's in that document, I think.
The new construction is the bigger difficulty because you wouldn't have the historic tax credits available.
You can't touch that.
The phasing idea is that to overcome just what you've identified, you would approach the historic structures first so that you could have the tax credits apply. That would be our, I mean, if we were trying to develop it, which we're not, that would be our approach, is that you do those pieces first. You'd get a nice activity occurring in those buildings that you are able to apply the historic tax credits. And then with the idea being that you're creating a bit of a new market for yourself in terms of residential rents. And as each increment of increase you can get with residential rents, the gap between cost and revenue decreases.
I mean, I think it'd be much more appealing if in that we see a $25 million gap, and here are the strategies that would knock off 5 million, 5 million, 3 million, whatever. But and each one of those, so we get the end, have eliminated the gap, because I think people look at that gap and they're going to
How you
say,
present it.
But it's all hypothetical here anyway.
right, well, you ask a hypothetical question, you get a hypothetical answer, right?
Would you get a hypothetical budget that
Right.
costs 25 million?
Right, but what you want to do is to say, this is what, I think it's credible that you've shown the $25 million gap. But I think then you have to say is, here are ways, strategies that could mitigate probably all of it.
By the way, the gap is 23 million, not 25.
Well, I think it's another 2 million. Well, it was 23 plus 2, if you look in that component, it's in 2 different places.
I think it's a good point to, in the report, integrate some of the implementation actions closer with that.
Kurt, you're always right.
It's like you have an area where you don't have a lot of housing, and there aren't many places in town where you've got that kind of open area. You've got. It seemed you've got a historical building that would be delightful to get renovated. Galleries, shops, restaurants, light industry. There are a lot of places over on Nod Way where they've got light industry. You might want to move over and be closer to the train station. It seems like that makes sense. But why all the housing when you have no other big splotch of undeveloped land around? Why not leave that undeveloped? Why put the extra housing, which is the 23 million? You can't support them without having them coming under that grant. They won't fit under the grant in the historical district. So why is that in there? Is it the idea that you need to have more people living in Clinton in order to support downtown?
Yes.
We don't have
that's part
a
of it.
downtown to support.
But we will get one. That's a good question.
No, it always goes this way.
Critical mass.
First, the artists come in, then the art galleries, then the restaurants, then the people.
Well,
And it goes just that way, you follow it, and then they go.
it goes the other
You
way.
go to another place. You think it's the other way?
Usually the other way.
Soho, Chelsea, all those areas. It starts first with the artists, then in comes the galleries, then in come the restaurants, then in come the higher income people, and then they move again. But you can't expect that you're just going to have people sitting there, and there's no downtown to go to.
Well,
So why not develop that? Or why put in the extra fee?
the leverage at the beginning at this point in the process is the train station. And you're looking at a transit-oriented district, which is in high demand in the Northeast. And if you were able to put high-quality housing in this location, in a nice district that's a walkable place that has access to the main street very easily, then it really does start to have a lot of characteristics which are beneficial. All of that together can start to create a shift in the market dynamic, which can lead to higher achievable rents, which closes the gap that Kirk identified in our report. Kirk identified that we identified in the report. So I think that, but it's a series of steps, because right now, what we're saying is that we don't think the market is there so that someone is going to flip this land and building an area to do what we're talking about doing. And that's why the steps that we've identified for the town to take are so important and critical to be welcoming and show the interest in having this type of thing occur in the future.
And if you start with the historic core, there are enough incentives out there for that, and that will bring artists and kinds of people that you're talking about. And then you can phase out the other things.
And actually, when you talked about this as the open space, the vacant area right at the center of town, when you say that, to me, in my context as a professional, I hear that it's a great opportunity to really add some positive activity to the town of Clinton. I don't hear we should keep such a centrally located asset of contiguous open land open. It should be better and more highly used.
And we can,
Guilford has a wonderful place called Westwoods, which is open land in the middle of the town. pretty much in the middle of
Would
town.
not go for it.
As one of the big draws. And the school, I think that the school here just got lost, didn't get the extra funding, did it? And when you look at a town to come to, if the school district isn't getting the funding to keep it up, that's one of the things that draws people away, not towards. Gotta have a good school district, and we keep not giving them the money they need. Those are the places where it seems to me you're battling two things at the same time.
I'm battling a lot of things, the economy, the market, all kinds of things, yeah.
But you just want to make sure the one you're getting, everyone's in the right ones. Clinton Crossing. I think helped a
This is
lot.
our best guess at an approach to it, and with the idea, nobody really expects, I mean, it's possible that this stuff will be built like this, but unlikely. But what it will do is stimulate a lot of discussion, maybe get a developer interested.
Don't forget that the gap is driven by two factors, the cost of building and by the rents.
Right.
That's what creates the gap. One of the developers that's interested is talking, as far as I've heard, it's only rumor at this point, he's talking $24,000 to $3,000 rents because he believes that the train station is that strong. Because nobody is moving in this direction along the shoreline.
Cranford did
Right.
a nice job with MIF, starting to do a
Yeah,
nice job
but
with the train station.
yeah, they've done a nice job, but the train station isn't,
No.
for 150
Yeah.
years, we've been stuck with this
Yeah.
train station that's blocked the downtown.
That's
And
true.
train tracks. But now, all of a sudden, having a train station downtown is a good thing. And so people are really interested in, because there are a lot, and even in your study, look at the population groups. It's not so much the family area, it's not the 34 to 54 group, it's the younger people and the people who are old, they're the ones who are looking for this kind of housing.
Well, that's exactly the.
And that's where the growth dynamic
And
is.
then with the price of gas.
And the price of gas, and a lot of the households, two-person households, and very likely, one of those people, one of the members of the household is going to be working in New Haven or New London, because that's where jobs are growing, and the other person is going to commute someplace. They have to locate in a place that's not convenient only for one commuter or two.
And
And
also,
the proximity to the highway is a factor here.
and it's a lower impact on your schools.
Yeah.
And
That's demographic.
The demographic that Alan described, which it shows up in the appendix that FXM's reporting on, that's attracted to this type of residential unit is not the type that is reviewing communities based upon schools.
Not that we should remove our schools.
Yeah, the school,
That's another issue.
Then they remove the building.
Yeah, I think the retail and the residential combination really lends itself well with the train commuting.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the industrial aspect of it kind of clouds it a little bit, the mixed use takes away from that. I think it is not all industrial, I think mixing it is difficult.
It's unlikely that it will be industrial in the same sense, that we thought of a decade ago. We looked at an example, which is MassMocha, the Museum of Contemporary Arts, which is a fantastic example. But if only we could get the state to build a museum
Well, first you have to
in
have.
the Unilever.
$40 million.
Yeah. First you have.
Margaret's in town working with us.
She's working here.
Yes, I'll tell you about it.
well, another example too that we looked at, which is I think maybe a little more viable than a home run like MassMocha, is Eastworks in East Hampton, I won't say East Hampton, Massachusetts, which is a collection, it's a community of artist live-work spaces, which are residential units combined with small home manufacturing uses, basically. And that is very manageable for the type of space that we believe we see.
Yeah, we've looking at those options. I mean, we say residential, but it was explicit. it's not in this draft actually, the live-work option.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Those are wonderful.
That's a real, again, you want to tap the dynamic in the market.
Yeah, it's good.
And that's a real dynamic, because people, they're creating their own enterprises rather than,
And you
There should be
essentially
explicit language about
it
in the
should,
zone.
the explicit
Yeah.
language belongs back.
And it's essentially a mill conversion. And mill conversions can easily be, I mean, one of the reasons I lived in Chelsea myself when it was cheap. And that's the reason artists go to those places, because they've already been abandoned by everybody else and they're cheap. And then we stay there long enough and then the developers come and throw us out. But this is a different thing. This is like a mill conversion where you can basically do whatever you want with it, be incentivized by a number of different organizations. And you can create, what you're talking about, the work.
But even if
That's
you
in
look,
the back, that whole housing thing.
but even if there is commercial space, I mean, that's
Not a
what you
problem.
want.
Not a
You
problem.
want small enterprises that are
Yeah.
involved in the arts or technology. Joe
You
left.
just want it to wake up,
Joe
whatever
was
you
our,
do.
Joe who left us arts restoration. He was talking about space.
We're working shop, even
That's a brilliant idea. It's in that with what.
Brad?
When you get into these other houses back there.
It's different in Chelsea, there's always somebody trying to walk to Chelsea from several blocks away. There's not, I've seen it happen outside.
Any more comments?
Yeah, I think we're pretty close to 9.
Anybody can send comments to me, and I will see that they get to Josh. I think that would be the easiest way.
That would be great.
And we are also going to post the whole presentation on RSVP.
Thank you all for your support.
Thank you.
Oh,